Whether you are watching this video during the Ukraine war or long after it ends, I think we will be all wondering why this war has raged on so long after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. And I'm Benjamin Angwin, and in my opinion, ancient Egypt has a lot to help us explain why this has been allowed to rage. Because there's a lot more to this than just two sides fighting. Ancient Egypt saw a revolt against a foreign dynasty, the Hyksos, who brought horses into Egypt. And I want to explain why there's some, not similarities, but it helps us explain why world leaders today, from China to America to France, India, are looking at this Ukraine war, taking a bit of distance and looking in and saying, what's going to happen with this new drone technology? Because this is the first large war in which drones have been used in multiple ways, in different ways by each side. And this is history shaking. When people think of the Ukraine war and what's going on, they don't tend to think of ancient Egypt. So let me say this. When you think of ancient Egypt, you think of pyramids, hieroglyphs, the Egyptian language, mummies, maybe if you're a bit religious, stuff about Moses leading his people out. But think about this, two things that are interrelated. Ancient Egypt as a civilization lasted for over 3,000 years. About 3,300 years. For us in our time, that's like going back to before the Roman Republic was founded, to the Greek city-states when they were fighting Troy, and just the first embers of Western civilization barely budding up. And this state, this civilization, continued all the way through. Yes, there were foreign rulers, the Persians, the Assyrians had to go, Greeks, a Greek kingdom in Egypt, the Romans. But there was a continuation of culture for over 3 millennia. And here's the thing, for over half that time, there were no horses. Let me say that again. For over 1,500 years, the first 1,500 years, 1,600 years, or more of Egyptian history, there were no horses. This was before the biggest of the pyramids, the names like Ramses, Tutankhamun, before all that. But take the earlier empires across the Middle East. I made a video on Elam. In their early history, no horses. The city-states of Sumer in southern Iraq, Uruk, Ur, no horses. The world's first real empire, Akkad, no horses. Babylon, I'm sure quite a few of you are familiar with that name. There were two Babylonian empires, and the first, which fell and then rose again. In the earlier part of that story, there were no horses. They had kind of donkey mule-like creatures that were suitable for tugging wagons, but not warfare. The frescoes that you see, the carvings that you see in the earlier history, those animals are not horses. Those are these, I think they call them tunga or kunga. That's what those are. Horses came out of the Eurasian steppe, and it took centuries to really learn how to breed them, to use them, to develop technologies, because if you breed them wrong, horses, they're completely useless. They're actually quite delicate. You have to carefully select which horse breeds with what horse, or you lose the functionality of the horse, at least from a military perspective. In Egypt, ancient Egypt, there were these Hyksos people. Now these were not Egyptians, these were migrants. Some people say they were Jews. I'm not sure about that, but they may have had some Jewish element attached to them. However, they were definitely Semitic, in my opinion. They came from Canaan and possibly in Syria, Jordan, all of that area. And they began with many other peoples from Western Asia, settling in the cities of the Nile River Delta in the north of Egypt. We have annals or chronicles in Egyptian telling us that they didn't like all these foreigners settling in their lands. And in some cities, these Hyksos people began to become a majority, these migrants in these cities. And what does Hyksos mean? There are a couple theories. So one could mean ruler of other lands. And that os, that's the Greek version of the ot ending, which is common to Semitic, for plural. Hebrew has that. Egyptian had ut. But there's also another meaning that it could be from this Egyptian word. I don't speak Egyptian, so I gotta look at this, right? Hekaukasut. It could mean shepherds, kings of shepherds. And that's interesting because there's a line in Genesis, in the later part of Genesis, just before Exodus and the story of the Jews leaving Egypt, when the Egyptians are said to not like shepherds. They don't like shepherds. And there's a few lines in that area, that part of early Exodus and late Genesis, where the Egyptians don't like sharing with foreigners. There's specific customs related, and it seems to me that's almost like a memory of this Hyksos conflict. And what happened was these minority groups, these immigrants, not just Hyksos, Jews, Canaanites, however you want to say it, maybe Proto-Arab peoples, they were settling in various cities within the lower or the northern Nile River Delta and becoming a majority. And this began to cause a backlash from the Egyptians. However, the Egyptians weren't really that advanced in terms of technology. They had to, or rather, they weren't innovative because their culture was more stationary. They depended upon these immigrants to give them new technologies, to innovate their culture for them. And one of these innovations was horses. And it appears that they let these Hyksos people manage the horses. Around 1730 BCE, Sebekotep IV died. This was the last strong pharaoh before these Asian immigrants in the Nile Delta began to take over. When he died, Egypt began to splinter, and these Asians with their horses began burning temples, massacring native Egyptians, desecrating their sites. Well, what are they going to do when they become a majority in these cities? Well, the same thing you're seeing happening in several Western European cities with minority groups being brought in. They began to form violent mobs in the cities, which produced regular riots. And in one of these areas, in the northeast of the Nile River Delta, the Hyksos revolted and established their own kingdom. And they spread across the northeastern part of Egypt and pushed out the native rulers, burning down their palace. The native Egyptians were not done. They should have been done, though, because these new enemies had horses, and they didn't know how to use them effectively. And they certainly didn't have as many as the Hyksos had. Remember, having one or two horses, that was one thing. But being able to rock up with 50 horses that you had carefully selectively bred and trained with your generations worth of horsemanship, that was another. The Hyksos reached all the way south to Memphis. This seems like it was a battleground. This major city, not Memphis, Tennessee, the original Memphis. It was a capital for a while in ancient Egypt. But there became a point when the native Egyptians, not those living under Hyksos rule, but those further south, down river or upriver, you know what I mean. In Thebes, they organized this city as kind of a center of national resistance. Now, how could they have done this? These are just immigrants. They're not as many as the native population. Well, they had concentrated in the cities, and they married their own people, which is going to cause problems over generations. And the native Egyptians didn't have horses, but these guys did, and they kept it to themselves. This was bad news. So Thebes, further in the south, where there weren't any of these Hyksos types, this became a center of national resistance, a center producing national propaganda. It was probably overemphasized, the idea of national liberation, but there certainly was a kernel of truth in it, that they would have understood they were fighting for their existence as a people against an imported ethnic group that had taken over the Nile River Delta further north. And there was a strong pharaoh, a man named Sekenenretau the Brave, realized that they had to do something, so he struck up the Nile and fought back, and pushed back the Hyksos a bit, but it didn't exactly end well for him. When they dug up his mummy, they found that his head had suffered several blows to it with an axe. However, he had two sons. His son Kamosha took the throne as pharaoh at Thebes, and immediately began using horses in a new way. He attached carts to the behinds of them, chariots, and put in a driver with an archer, and then made a small group of these so that you could dive in, fire arrows, retreat, and then have a circle of them doing that over and over again. It was clever. He also developed a new way to take back territory. So there were different villages up and down the Nile, and some of them were purely Hyksos held. Most of them were Hyksos ruling over native Egyptians. But some of them were Egyptians in the pay of Hyksos, and some of them were controlled fully by native Egyptians. So how do you deal with four different types of settlements? If you have horses, it's suddenly a lot easier. You can send out strike groups to assess who's what, scouts like drones from the sky. And then you know. And furthermore, you can launch a blitzkrieg movement, which he did, up the Nile along with boats, kind of like in parallel. Boats up the Nile, horses up the land. You can hold off the port of one town whilst going around it with horses to attack the next town, so that they're isolated from each other, or completely going around an entire fort, because you don't need to take it. You don't need to take it, you just need to block it off, slowly put it to siege. And he won back a lot of territory, taking back Memphis, but the capital actually of these Hyksos people was Avaris, up in the northeast, in their demographic heartland of where these immigrants had settled in the Nile River Delta. Kamosha didn't quite get that far, but he was the one that innovated this new technology with the horses. And his brother, Amoshe, finished the job and took down the Hyksos capital at Avaris in the Nile River Delta. And this moment, after that, we're talking 1550 BCE. That moment really is the beginning of what would become the Egypt that we know of, the great, the Sphinx, the clothing, the elaborate garments, like Stargate style kind of stuff, if you've seen that film. Big pyramids, decorative. And after I need to mention as well, whilst they were doing this, there's a kingdom to the south, Kush, in the Numidians. What Kamosha did was actually fight a two-front war using horses. And there was no way that the native Egyptians would have been able to do that before this technology, without this chariot technology. They crushed both sides, really expanding Egypt's borders eventually to what would become its greatest extent. Immediately after these Hyksos were finally pushed out, the Egyptians They sent scout groups, essentially, raiding parties into Libya. Stop messing with us. The Libyans were like, okay, we'll stop trying to raid your borders. They had further reach than any of their surrounding people because of this chariot technology. So they'd smashed the Numidians to the south, established a sphere of influence, like a vassalship sort of. The pirates and raiders in Libya, they firmly established a border to stop that nonsense. And then the Jews come into the story. Because the Egyptians went up and basically conquered the area that is now Israel eventually, and began to enslave people and bring them back to Egypt. We know what happened then. So how does this relate to Ukraine? Well, think about China. I know that's a bit out to the east. You get these images of fancy drone shows over their cities. A cute boy kicking a ball. Dragons. Flowers, panda bears. But it's not pretty and cute, actually. I'm sure the CIA and the MI6 intelligence agency in Britain are fully aware of what this actually is. China is showing what it's capable of doing with drones. You can have one guy with a glove raise 12,000 drones and with his fingers shoot them at an enemy. That's crazy. And with Ukraine, it's becoming a testing ground for this new technology of how to use drones. Ukraine is faced with this massive enemy. Now, historically, Russia just sends human waves with lots of artillery from behind. That's how they smashed the Chechens. That's how they smashed the Nazis. That's how they've done it a lot. And Ukraine understands Russians. They've been absorbed by them more than once. And so they use drones in an innovative way. They're like, well, what if we prevent those troops from getting to the front to reinforce the troops that are already there? I'm still getting over my illness. So they have drones take out vehicles behind the lines, so they can't transport troops. There's even a case recently of Russians being so low on vehicles that they're using horses to transport troops and attack at the front. Meanwhile, Russians are using drones to launch massive bombs and launch against infrastructure that's connecting it to Europe. The Ukrainians are using this against infrastructure as well, but in a different way, to try and break the Russian economy. What I'm saying is these two sides are using drone technology, not only in different ways, but in different formations, different size drones, different length of flight, different patterns of attack. And the world leaders around the world are looking at this and they're like, this is clearly the future of war. And since we've not ever seen how to use a quick squadron to dive in, attack, and dive out with drones, like chariots going into Libya from ancient Egypt, we're going to sit back and study how these two forms of drone warfare fight against each other. And it looks like the more agile, nimble one, the Ukrainian one, works better, which is exactly why the Hyksos lost against the native Egyptians who innovated the chariot. However, the Russians have a lot more resources. So world leaders are unsure of which side to pattern their own drone technology on. You see what I'm saying? And so innocent Ukrainians and innocent Russians too are dying so that world leaders can study how they kill each other in order to develop their own military drone technology. It's sad. However, looking at China, we in the West have a clear warning. We cannot allow communists to become so much better at us with drone technology and it looks like China has a head start on drones. I'm worried about the West because we're not taking this threat seriously. America's drone technology is not as advanced or focused as China's. We win in almost every other category, fair enough. But drones are the future of warfare. And as they disguise their technologies or abilities with these cute displays for the public above their cities, we in the West are not doing anything of the kind. And we have large migrant groups coming into our lands who are rioting in our cities. And we need to become aware that eventually we may have to fight back as well, just like the native Egyptians did. And that will require us to develop drone technology in a new and innovative way, which liberates our lands from our enemies potentially, not all too unsimilar to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about that